Hi, it's Barbara Boshin, and thank you guys so much for joining. I'm from Co-Merchant, and Co-Merchant is a relisting from Amazon to Walmart service. And also we have EasyKey, which is an automated keywording service. And I'm so excited that you guys can join us tonight. Chakra?
Hey guys, today my camera is in trouble, so you start to see my picture. I I'm with Jungle Works. It's a small accounting and tax planning services for e-commerce sellers, mostly focused on Amazon. Barbara.
Perfect. So tonight we have Brenda Sanford, and she is the admin, the head admin, the keeper of the group, the safeguard of all crazy people not being in our group, on our Facebook group, Amazon Exclusive. And she also is an incredible Amazon seller. And I'm really excited to have her on tonight so we can learn more about direct sourcing. And direct sourcing is different. It's private label, but it's the right kind of private label. So it's not just the coffee pot and everybody gets to put their brand name on it. It's a real business from the ground up. So welcome. And this is huge.
Thank you, Barbara.
Just turn my sound up just a hair. So in addition to your copious duties adminning the group, but you have a can you give us a little idea of your origin story? I was corporate American, I sold some stuff on eBay and whatever, but how did you get here? How did you get to the point where you're swearing and cursing about Amazon like the rest of us?
I went to college, of course, many years ago, and I studied consumer economics. And there we studied manufacturing, mostly appliances, compliance, marketing, the whole gamut of, designing product and bringing to the market. And from there, a couple of weeks before I graduated from college, I was offered a job as a police officer in the Midwest. And so I was one of the first, not the first, but one of the first female officers here in the Midwest. And I worked there for 25 years. And then after I retired, my sisters and I started buying out estate sales. And one day my youngest sister came into our office one day and she goes, there's this new place on the internet. It's called eBay. Mm-hmm. I retired in 1998. So we started selling our goods on eBay. Well, eventually we split up and went our own ways. And I had always worked in the Asian arts. I did all the valuations and stuff of Asian art and antiques. And so I started going to China, sourcing into the small villages, sourcing carvers and.
Wait. You're going to go, I got to interrupt you. What do you mean you started going to China to small villages? That's quite a leap from college to police force to getting on a plane. What does that mean?
Okay. You mean you couldn't cut that? Okay, I became a police officer in 1974. I retired at the end of 1998, which was actually the first of 1999. So I had 25 years there that I did nothing e-commerce or retail or anything. Mm-hmm. And so then after my sisters and I, had started selling on eBay, and then we eventually broke up and kind of went our own separate ways. So I decided that I wanted to go to China and source original product, hand-carved product that was new. And so that's what I did. I went to China, to the small villages, and looked for carvers and factories. And I started loading up containers and bringing them back to Kansas City.
That to me is huge, because if you go back, we're talking 22 years ago, nobody was doing that. Nobody was getting, now people are getting on, they're going with certain people and they're giving them a tour and they go to the trade show. Nobody's going, there's very few people. I know one other person, Jing, that actually goes to the factories and goes to the small villages. So I'm pretty impressed with that. That's did you know somebody, or did you just was there a tour? How did you even figure that out?
Well, I had met a business in Florida that he was from China, and he was bringing over carvings and stuff selling out of Florida. So he set me up with a tour guide, and he set me up with a bodyguard and a guide and a translator. And so that's how I travel. I would stay in Hong Kong, and we would take the ferry over to Old China, and then we would drive for days, going to the different the small villages and factories, and meeting carvers.
Well, now I know, like, you definitely were a cop, because there's not too many people that would undertake that. And with a tour guide and driving for days into the hinterlands of China. So that must have been really like an adventure.
Oh, it was exciting. I mean, I was so impressed with everything I saw in China. There's so much history, 5,000 years of history, and you just couldn't see it all.
That's really impressive. So what was your goal when you went there? What were you thinking? You were saying carvers. What were you looking for?
I was looking for master craftsmen that was mainly carving out stones. And so I was looking for garden statuary basically, but I was also looking for jade, different colors and categories of jade, and having carvings made. And I went to the factories where they were hand carving statuary, garden statuary. And so I would load up containers with this garden statuary out of granite and bring it back to my warehouse in Kansas City.
Wow. And like, was it a lot different then? You know, again, 20 years ago, was it a lot different then, the importing and the inspections and all that to get it back versus today?
No, I think it's basically the same. The importing has not really changed.
More expensive, maybe, but
more expensive. But I mean, we went through times 20 years ago where like a 20-foot container would cost me $10,000.
Wow.
So, but now it's $17,000. But back then,
I do really think that's temporary, or at least I hope so. I got an email today where we have to raise our prices. And I'm like, you went from $22 a piece map to $26. That's a huge price increase.
I know. I had not raised my prices for several years, and today I raised all my prices about 30%.
Wow. Yeah, I'm going through my stuff, but we're going to Prosper next week, so I'm going through everything today, and I'm like, where do I need to up the prices, because all my costs are going up.
It's terrible.
My supply costs, my sourcing costs, my inventory costs, everything is. They're trying. Some of the vendors are like, it's just temporary. We're just putting a 3% surcharge. Some are like, these are the new prices. I was like, woof. So when you went to these villages and you found the carvers, did you say, hey, that's cute, I'll get that? Or did you say, I want, like, how did it evolve? Like, how did you go from looking at things and bringing them in to designing and building your own, designs and ideas and implementing that?
Well, the first couple of times that I brought in a container, then my wheels started turning, and I started thinking, I would really like to have this changed to this, or I would really like to use this product or this mineral or this substance in a product that was mine. And so then I would ask them to change the color or change a stone or change, the statuary. I got most of my ideas from the statuary from them. That was just that was their regular designs, and then I just kind of grew off of that, and I added additional designs to the statuary.
So did you think, like, maybe I'll do more? Did you Americanize it, or did you?
No,
you just kept it very Oriental, but just different facets of the same thing.
Right. And I was selling bridges. I was selling
bridges.
Yeah, I was selling Japanese garden water bridges. And so, I was selling bridges for like $25,000 at the time. Wait,
explain that again. That's not where I thought you were going.
I was selling huge statuary. huge.
Oh, because I know you as a rain gauge queen.
Oh, well,
So
no, I'm the range gauge
we
queen
have a
now.
long path to go from here to there, I think. All right, I'm making a note. I'm making a note that I'm going to ask about how you went from A to Z here. So you're selling giant statuary bridges
And
like,
statues and fountains and things like that.
wow. So when you say fill up a container, it didn't take much to fill it up because some of those pieces were pretty big.
Were huge. Yeah, but they all come in parts, in pieces.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So do you still bring in statuary?
I do some, but it's a lot smaller. So what happened in 2009 was that in 2004 when I started going to China, and 2009 my cancer came back. I had a second round of cancer that had come back, and I was starting chemo again. So I got rid of the warehouse, and we got rid of the and we put our house up. And my husband was working for American Airlines at the time, and they told him that they were closing the overhaul base here in Kansas City, but he was going to be transferred to Tulsa, to that facility. And so we moved, downsized, and got rid of the warehouse and everything. And then a few months later, he was notified that American had hired somebody else, and he was not going to be transferred with them.
Oh, thanks, guys.
Then I got well. It was like, oh, I got well. And I was like, what am I going to do now? I have to reorganize my business. I have to rethink my business. So, because I no longer had a warehouse. So I didn't really have a lot of storage. And so I started making bread baskets. I started because they were smaller. And so I was watching an episode on the Amazing Race, and they were in Bangladesh, and they were working with all these factories, and I really liked the way that all the people in the Bangladesh reacted to the Amazing Race contestants. So I did some research, and I started finding companies in Bangladesh that could make my baskets for me. They would weave my baskets, and then they hand incised my heating tiles. And so I started selling those on Amazon, and I became the bread basket lady on Amazon. I was a top 40 product, And of course during the pandemic, because all the borders were closed, no one could bring in inventory. And and Bangladesh keeps getting shut down even today. Today, they're still shut down from July 4th. They don't know if they're going to be open back up here soon, but it would take about 9 months by the time that I would send my designs to this factory on the colors I wanted and how the weave I wanted on the basket. And I always kept my heating tiles the same design with the lotus. So I put those on all the different sizes of baskets that I had. But this year, when I realized how much work they entailed to keep up for Amazon, because they're 6 pounds to ship, the retail packaging is 13 by 7. And it took up a lot of space on Amazon, and it cost a lot of money to ship. So I decided then, well, what do I do now to bring back my business? Because I think everybody had to reorganize during the pandemic. You had to figure out something else. How were you going to carry on your business? So then I thought, well, I was carrying a line of rain gauges that I had started designing a few years ago. And I thought, so I started researching all the marketplaces, and I realized that there was only very few decorative figures that people were using. And I decided that I would start designing rain gauges that were different than what anybody else had. And so far this year, I have 8 rain gauges, and I have 3 new ones coming.
And for people who do RA and do wholesale, it's like, oh, that doesn't seem like a lot of products, but each one is its own evolution, right? Each one is its own birthing process. And so what's involved in making a rain gauge?
Well, first of all, you have to get the design that you want. So let's say the one that I introduced in October last year was a bluebird. So I had to decide that how I wanted my bluebird to look, what I wanted the bluebird to be sitting on, and how how I wanted to present it. Did I want something pretty? Did I want something large? Did I want something that just people would see and just love? So, I mean, all that you have to take into account everything when you design. So when I designed the bluebird, I decided, because that's the Missouri state bird and the New York state bird. And the bluebird is very popular here, and I get them in my bird garden all the time. So, and they're beautiful birds. And I don't think everybody has the chance to see a bluebird very often. And so I decided I would make a bluebird rain gauge, and the flower that I put on the bluebird, it's sitting on a log, and the flower I put on the bluebird is from the dogwood tree, which is also the state tree of Missouri.
Okay.
And so that's what I would send to my, so I sent that to my factory in China, my drawings and what I had in mind and the color schemes and the flowers that I wanted to put on there. And so they would make me a mold out of what my design was.
Okay. Now, do they charge you a mold fee?
No.
Because I know that sometimes I've talked to people and it can be, depending on what you're doing, like glass is inexpensive, but plastic is extraordinarily expensive. So a mold for glass, it's a couple $100s, but a mold for plastics is thousands of dollars. But it doesn't sound like you're doing resin, right?
Yes, which is a plastic. But so I have been using this factory now for probably 5 years, and we entered an agreement that they would remove any of my designs from their other customers, that they were no longer available to them. Mm-hmm. And so, so about every quarter I do have a new order coming from them normally. And so I just continue growing my designs, and they have these fabulous artists that make these molds that they just look so lifelike. I mean, I was just so amazed what they would come up with. And so I've stuck with them. And of course, right now, you know, this is probably one of my larger orders coming from them, but that's what's coming in that container that's now gone up to $17,000 for just the container.
And is that a 40-foot container or a 20-foot container?
It's a 20-foot.
Okay. Oh, whoa.
Yes.
Well, this time I thought it was a 40-foot, and I was like, that's not horrible, but 20-foot, that's horrible.
Yeah, it's horrible. I mean, 2 years ago, I was paying $6,000 for a 20-foot container.
Now, do you think this is going to stick, or is this something that's going to, like, it's just now and then things are going to calm down? Like,
I think it's going to eventually calm down, because we've gone through times before when, you know, shipping was high again. But I mean, I've never seen shipping on a 20-foot container more than $10,000. And to me, I thought that was high. But I think it's going to be temporary. I think once people start getting all their inventory in stock, and all the businesses start getting their inventory in, LA is backed up at least 5 weeks getting containers out, you know, getting them through customs and getting them sent. I have mine brought to me in Kansas City on a train. And so train has gone up 30% right now.
Wow.
But it's LA. They're the ones that have they're backed up for at least 5 weeks right now, getting the containers out.
I know I just got a new plush toy in. And the manufacturer is like, we just got it on the boat before this new thing hit. And the new thing was, they're saying, oh, we're not going to charge you more for the container, but you're going to have to pay a premium for the people to load. So they were paying like a $3,000 surcharge just to get in the line to get people to put the stuff from the dock onto the boat. And I was like, oh, and she goes, you guys were lucky. We got in under normal stuff, so your shipment was fine, but we could have been paying a lot more. So it's evolving.
Yeah, it's pretty bad right now. I mean, it is really bad. I mean, even my factory, they said they couldn't believe how high it had gotten, how bad it was.
That is huge. So they don't charge you. No, it's so frustrating. Like, it's a shame, like, you can't like bunk in with somebody that has a 40-foot. Maybe it'd be cheap. I think it just is what it is until it's not anymore. Right?
I think so too. I think that if we did do more, if more people got together and we did a 40-foot, like two of us, I think the cost would probably be a little less, would be better if I knew somebody here in Kansas City that was coming to the same place.
Yeah, I mean, I know people that bring in from like our next shipment that's like 3 weeks delayed, maybe 4 weeks at this point, is going into California, and then he ships it. I think they do UPS. We don't have that much. We buy like then maybe a couple pallets will come to us. But it comes from California over. So you might be able to find someone who at least gets it to the port with you and then moves it in.
Well, they already had to decide this back in when I put my order in, which was, when did I put my order in? February or the 1st of March, I put my order in. They had to rent or find my 20-foot at that point to reserve it.
Okay.
So they had to, I mean, because they're just all tied up. There just isn't any 20-foot available out there. You have to rent them in advance. So they've been holding this for me since 1st of March.
So what do you think the hardest, besides the shipping thing, which is just, it's probably not hard, it's just painful. What do you think the hardest part of the whole process is? Like, I'm thinking like, how is this compare to what we call private label or white label? Like the benefits, the pros and cons, like, you could have just taken something that they already had and done that over. And you may have done that in the very beginning. Like, how has that evolved? Do you know what I mean?
At first, when I first started designing and I sent my designs to China, I walked into a Bed Bath & Beyond one day and there was my design. My product sitting on their shelf. And it was like, so that's when I moved away from China for a long time, and I went to Bangladesh.
It felt like a gut punch, I bet, right? You're like, I just did all this work and here it is. And
yeah. So, I mean, so that I use Bangladesh, and I go to Peru quite a bit for factories. But then a lot of the factories were still contacting me from China, and it's just a different personality, and you just have to learn how to deal with them. And I told him, I said, I didn't want my designs out there. I wanted them to do something exclusive for me, that they could be my sole producer or my sole factory for me. And so, I mean, it was just, I think the hardest part was developing trust, and the hardest part was getting to the point of developing where you could trust them with your designs, and that they're not going to turn around and sell them, to somebody else. I think that was probably.
How did you do that? Like, how did you even make that happen?
Well, at first I dealt with several of the reps from the factory. They had me working with reps. And then I guess the owner noticed that I was having a lot of things I was having a lot of things original made for, their artists were doing for me. And so now I deal directly with the owner of the company.
I know a lot of the things that we do with manufacturers here in the States in our business, we have one or two situations. One, we never even talk about it being exclusive. We say it's exclusive, but we never say any time period. And then I have the next step where they're like, you get it for a year. So we're designing a folding knife, and the folding knife is good for us for 1 year. Now, should we reorder it in that year, I guess it would extend another year. So I'm hoping that's the way that one's going to go. But some of them, it runs a whole gamut between, like, oh, no, you can't have an exclusive, but we'll make you. I'm like, well, why would I buy 1,000 of these from you if it wasn't exclusive at some level or another? Like, why would I buy so much? You're not giving me a discount or not much of one. And I don't know. So, I've learned over time that when you're talking to a manufacturer, whether it be a factory manufacturer or a distributor, retailer a vendor in the United States, you got to ask a lot of questions. Actually, that's negotiation 101. Ask as many questions as you possibly can, even if you're not going to do what the questions seem like you're going to do. So when you saw that in Bed Bath & Beyond, like, what did you think? Like, did you go back to them and say, hey, like, did you just stop dealing with that manufacturer? Or?
Yes. And I contacted them, and of course they said that they didn't do it, but somebody that might've worked in the factory might've done it. So
I know I go on Alibaba and I can find a lot of my stuff there for sale. I don't know whether anybody's buying it or not. I never see it on Amazon or anything, but yeah, I do see that. Wow. So how do you even find these manufacturers?
It's
You don't have to tell me your secrets, but I'm like,
I'm trying to think
where do you
how I
go?
would
Like, how do you
explain this.
find them?
I mean, I mean, a lot of them I probably had met when when it was going over to China. I knew where they were
Okay.
located, and I knew they were valid, because a lot of the people on Alibaba that you see are just representatives
Yeah.
for that factory. They're not really from the factory. So I mean, it just helps to have kind of a knowledge of what the ground layout is over there, to know, to know what kind of factory it might be, or what kind of representative they might be. And
Do you
so
think it's really important? Do you think it's vital or important that you go overseas, or do you have to go and go to the factories, or do you think that's something you do down the road? Is there an intermediary? You think that makes sense, or?
well, personally, I enjoyed going over there and making sure that they were the real deal. And I wanted them to see that I was the real deal, that, I
Right.
could be trusted too, because see, they have a distrust of us, just like we have a distrust of them.
What is their distrust of us?
Well, I don't know how to explain it. They just think, I don't know, they think of Americans just in a different way. I'm going to say, from somebody that's overseas, they just think of Americans in a different way. A lot of them think that you're just made of money. A lot of them think that, they think that you're just, you're trying to steal their services too.
Okay.
And
it's probably true in some cases, right? But I know I've had personally trying to do something blind. So I've had really good success where I've met people at trade shows who know somebody that refer me and blah, blah, blah. What I've had trouble with is going like direct via Alibaba and finding a vendor, finding the real vendor, not a representative, and then getting through the whole process. And I was like, listen, I want to buy 500 units. I don't want to test this. I want to make sure this is I got the right, I know what I'm doing. I want to test it, make sure it's the right thing. And, halfway through, like 6, 7 times with samples, and they're not right. And they didn't do this, they didn't do that. And then they're like, oh, well, are you ready? And finally we get to the end, they're like, well, 5,000. I'm like, no, still 500, and it's just like, it was a total waste of time. I think it was only like $1,000 that I burned going through trying to validate this. And I probably saved myself tens of thousands of dollars. But I mean, we've had some really interesting interactions. I have a vendor who is Chinese American, and he goes to China, and he brings in tons of stuff for his business, so he piggybacks on us. And the thing that was frustrating for me was we got a product in, and I was like, the Chinese company shrunk all the dimensions by 1/8 of an inch, which was just enough to invalidate its function. And when I contacted him, he's like, oh my God, I can't believe this. I can't believe that they did this to me. And I'm speaking Chinese to them, and he's Chinese American, so he's totally on board. But, it doesn't even matter. It doesn't even have to be that you're an American. You could be, I don't want to say half and half, but you could have foot in both worlds and still have the same issues. So that was pretty frustrating. But
exactly. There's one way that you can verify probably from home, is that Google Maps is a real good tool, that if you look at the address that Alibaba is giving you, and you can look on Google Maps and see what it is. You can see if it's an office building or a factory.
Okay.
That's one way to verify it. And I mean, Google is your friend, and Google Maps, they will satellites will take you all the way to the ground, where you can actually do a 3D of what the building is. And people, sometimes they catch people, going in and out, that kind of thing.
So Chakra is asking, is there anything you can do without going overseas to figure out if the contact is a real factory or a middleman? And which you just answered. And also, is there any value in using a sourcing agent? Do you think that they provide something? I've had mixed results of that myself, but what do you think?
Well, personally, a sourcing agent. Now you're talking about someone who actually lives in China. I mean, I think that when I first started going over there, I think that's what you would have called my guide. He was probably a sourcing agent because he also, you know, had his own warehouses and his own stores. But they also see what you're selling and see what you're doing, and they copy that. So I mean, there's got to be a place where you got to figure out at what point do you want to let people know how much you're designing and what you're designing. And
I've done a lot of stuff on 1688, which is like the direct source of Alibaba, but you have to be prepared to use a lot of Google Translate to put your English into Chinese and the Chinese into English. But it is more source centric and less brokers. So that's been good. I mean, you know, I think by and large, the manufacturers want to do a good job. They want to get the business, but they don't want to waste a lot of time with people doing trials or limit with small runs, which is my frustration because I'm like, I want to make sure I want to do like 500 to 1,000 units before I commit to a big order. Because I want to make sure I got all my buttons right. Like I don't know until I try it. It seems like my research is good. It seems like my keywords are good. Oh, that's good. But until I like pop it up there, maybe it's not. So, so what do you
I mean, most of the time, if the factory's asking you for 5,000, a minimum of 5,000, you definitely need to check Google Maps and see how big the factory is.
Right.
Because I mean, those are usually the larger factories that do a lot of work for like the bigger companies here in the United States. Most I find that in my price range are mostly asking for a minimum of 1,000.
Okay, like 1,000 is a doable amount.
Yeah, 1,000. I can do a test with 1,000. Usually, it'll take me about a year to get rid of all of it on a test. So, I mean, so that's
I want to have it like I would like to do 505 colors or something like that, but. Now, a lot of times what I've run into is they want you to do exactly what they have. I'm like, okay, this is great. You make this passport cover, you make this toothbrush, whatever it is. Okay, I would like it like this. I'm like, oh, no, we have it in red, green, and yellow. I'm like, I don't want it in red, green, and yellow. I want it in tiger stripes and leopard.
Well, that's probably a rep. That's probably a rep you're talking to.
That's how you can tell if they won't move, right?
Right. If they don't want to help you add something additional to the product, that's usually probably just a rep.
Yeah, they want to sell what's out there, so
that's already for them that they know that it's easy money for them.
So that's a good way. So in answer to Chaka's question, that's a good way to test is that if they won't make you something in your own pattern, it doesn't have to be a design, it doesn't have to be a huge breakaway from what they're doing.
It could just be a different color, could be just one more ingredient that you want to make it a little stronger, or you want it to sparkle different, or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, they have the capabilities to flex. So let's talk rough costs. If you're going to go, this will be the question everybody asks. So we're in a mastermind and there's like 6 of us in this mastermind, and one person is sort of always done bundles and always done stuff, like has never really made the big deep dive into like dropping $5,000, $10,000 on a product. So she's like, well, how much should I budget? And I'm like, that's such a personal question. It's like, I'm telling you to spend X, but I'm not guaranteeing that you're going to get Y return. So if I say 5,000, maybe that's a good number. Maybe it's a bad number. Like how much can you, it's almost like how much can you afford to lose? Right. So like, what do you think is like when you go do RA, you need $100. When you do wholesale, you need $500. When you do quote unquote private label, you need a couple $1,000s. When you're doing your own products and maybe even private label to the same extent, like what do you think is the budget?
For one product, for 1,000 of one product that I designed, that they make the mold and do the hand painting and use my colors and the types of paint that I want to use, I would say a rough cost would be $5,000 for 1,000.
That's the cost of the product. That's
the cost of the product. That's just
not the development where they're sending you, is it maybe it includes like sending you samples and things like that. But that's lots of shipping cost, obviously.
I don't do samples anymore. I just do it all
you
online.
got a trust built up.
Yeah, I do it all online, and they take 3D pictures for me, photos, and they have a professional photographer come in and do the photos for me, so I can have the photos from all the way around it and look at it, and then I mean, there's been many times I've changed colors, I've changed I've changed something in their design, and it's always fine with them as long as before they start production.
Right. You don't want to do it midway through. So that's your product cost, but that's like this is the whole question that came up. So $5,000 for the product right now, $17,000 to bring it in.
No, 5,000 units. No, that's about 75. That's about 8,000 units for a 20-foot container.
Oh, okay. So we're talking like $5 a unit, and then in that container you bring 8,000 in, and are you budgeting for a year? Are you budgeting for
I always budget for a year, but I have one design right now that this is my third order this year for it.
Wow. Okay.
And so I mean, every time I've increased the order amount, each time the numbers, and so this time this is my fourth reorder for that one product.
Yeah, I have one like that. Like every time I'm like, I don't know, like things are changing so much. I ordered it in March and the company messed up, so it's not going to be here until November. About 3 months late, I'll be out of stock for. So that stinks, but it is what it is. Hopefully the changes they're implementing are gonna come back to me in another way, and it'll all be good. But we'll have to see. So,
but I'm just saying that 5,000 is usually, if you just want it for 1,000 units of one product that you're designing, you should plan on spending about $5,000.
Okay, I think that makes sense. I really don't think I'm thinking back a couple of years ago, and someone's like, "Oh, you can get a $10,000 trip to China, and we'll show you how to do everything and find everything." Wait, and I was like, "Wait, what now? It's $10,000. I'm giving you $10,000 and I'm walking back with nothing? Oh no, you're gonna learn, you're gonna go to the trade show, you got a hotel room, you got a nice little vacation." I'm like, $10,000. So for $10,000, and that's not even the inventory of the product. I was like, you better find me something that is gonna kill it. But that's not the ticket. That's so it's like, and a friend of mine went on that trip. I'll leave all the names out. And she said there were people on that trip with her who had never sold a thing. I was like, and she had come up through RA and private label and, wholesale and everything. So she had a really good background. She had just never done her own products. But she said she couldn't believe that there was a dozen other people on the trip with her, $10,000 just to quote unquote learn. I was like, wow, I'm cheap. I can't, that doesn't, that seems like a lot for tuition.
Well, I fly free, so.
Yeah. Well, that's nice for you TWA person.
That takes up a lot of costs.
Yeah, I have a friend that he everywhere he goes, "Oh, I'm gonna fly in." I'm like, "Shut up," because I know like he's got a friend that has no significant other, so he's her significant other, and I was like, "I hate you," because I got to pay for everything. I used to work at a travel agency right before 9/11. So I got hired the day before 9/11. So all the perks of being in a travel agency would evaporated overnight. What do you need to like look out for? Like, what do you think is like you've been to this movie a couple times. You've been in a couple countries. What's the big uh-ohs?
I don't know. Okay, the big uh-ohs. How would I? My red flags are always up. You know me, because I'm a retired police officer. So I'm always looking for something that's going to be.
And a teacher, like you were also a teacher, so that's another thing.
That's true. Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, I did teach at MU, in the School of Law, and of course back then when I started teaching what I was teaching, a lot of the prosecutors would say, "What does this young girl got to tell us? What can she teach us?" And so they would say, "Well, just take her class and tell us what you think." So then they would come back later and be, my biggest promoters, my supporters. They were my biggest supporters because they could not believe all the information I had to give them.
Right.
So that was kind of funny. So, I mean, I got stories I could tell you about police work, but
I bet you could. And
I was the first in a lot of things. I was in charge of extraditions for about 5 years, and I was the first female police officer to go to a federal penitentiary and extradite a prisoner.
Do what, a prisoner?
Extradite a prisoner back, take back with me. I was the first female.
Wow.
That went to Leavenworth and take it.
That is a lot of. There's a lot to. I hate that phrase, but there's a lot to unpack in what it means for when like there's a lot of female police officers now, but when you were a police officer, it was you were like one of the few.
Oh, there wasn't very many. In fact, I have pictures of some memorial services things that we had in the 80s, and there was like 3 women out of 1,500 officers there.
Yeah, it's not easy to be a woman in a lot of different things, but especially not that.
Okay, anyway. we got off.
Yeah, we did.
I'm sorry.
a bit, in a while in there, but so what things to look at? What are your red flags?
The red flags to me is I want to make sure that they speak English, because if they're not going to speak English to me, then I can't communicate with them.
True.
I've had people tell me that they didn't speak English and then later find that they did. So that's a red flag to me. A red flag is always trying to up their prices.
Wait, you had people said they didn't speak English and find out later that they did?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
I think that's even scarier than someone saying, "Oh, I speak good English," and they don't.
Yeah, they don't. I don't know. I don't know. I kind of feel like I'm just rarely kind of lucky in the dealings that I've had recently.
What about deposits? Like, how much deposits do they generally want from you?
Sorry, that was my grandson.
Oh.
So what was that?
Deposits, like, I like with my Chinese American friend, he wants 50% up front. I'm like, I'm okay with that because he's taking care of all the import, he's taking care of all the, that's fine. And he lets me send him a check and it gets to him like, 3 weeks later or whatever. He's not even, he goes, "Oh, you need to send me the deposit." And I'm like, oh, I forgot, but he's really easygoing with us. It's not no red flag. But like, how much are you okay with putting on a deposit?
I usually put anywhere from 20 to 30% down.
That makes sense. And then do you do, like, some people, everything is fungible. Everything is different, depending on what you're doing. Like we've had 30, 30, 40. Is that 100? Yeah. So we had 30, 30, 40, like 30% down, 30% on the water, and then 40% on delivery. So it's like, that's reasonable.
Yeah.
We've had 50% up front and 50% on delivery. So I guess that's okay. I would never give anybody 100% up front.
No, never give anybody 100% up front. And I used to do transfers, wire transfers, and the banks will take care of you because they're going to verify all the numbers that you have is going to the company, going to the correct accounts. And because it's flagged through, right before it leaves the United States, if it's not in the same name as the company where the money's going, they stop the money from going. Right. I've had that happen a couple of times. And but now I deal a lot in just transfers from my just regular ACH transfers with this company that I work with. But my goal is to be the rain gauge queen this year with Amazon.
Do you have your tiara?
I'm going to order it. You showed me a link on Etsy.
You already had it. I was like,
I know. I'm going to wear it. I am going to wear it. I'm going to make some videos. So I am going to wear it, and it says rain gauge queen on it. And so I've got to get people's mindset into thinking that if I'm looking for a rain gauge, who do I call? Who do I look up?
I just had a question I was thinking about, and I lost my train of thought. Oh, so obviously have you ever done any of the other models besides doing direct? I call it direct source. Some people might call what you're doing private label, but I call it direct source because you're developing all the products yourself. Have you done any of the wholesale? Have you done any of that? Have you done your products as wholesale?
I do. I have done wholesale in the past because I have not been able to afford all the things I want to offer with my products, like, birds. I do outdoor birding. And so I like to have a lot of products that are available that people would shop my store in addition to my designs. And so I do wholesale.
Okay.
I did try wholesale with Amazon years ago. Trying to think. I started on Amazon in 2006. So this would have been, it was probably 8-9 years ago. And I just did not like it at all. I didn't like how the agreements that I had with Amazon and how they took over my products. So I just basically took my products back and got out of doing the vendor central with them.
Oh, you didn't like, what did you not like about that?
Well, they would take over my listings. And then later on, when I was trying to change the listings to upgrade them, because every year you do kind of upgrade your products a little bit and you want to add something to it.
Right.
Or, your retail boxing, you might do something different with your retail box and you want to highlight how it's packed or something. And then you couldn't change your own listing because Amazon had taken it over and it was now considered Amazon's product.
Now it belongs to the catalog team.
Yes.
Ugh.
So I didn't like that. I didn't like how they would send me the product they would ask for so much product for each month, and then they would send me back the product that had not sold at my cost. I didn't like that. But I just didn't like, the agreement that, how Amazon treated us.
It's not really real wholesale. It's Walmart. I call it Walmart wholesale because Walmart was one of the first to come up with that. And Bed Bath & Beyond does the same thing. When you send in product to them, they're like, "Oh, well, it didn't sell, so here you go, you get it back." I'm like, "Well, wait a minute. Why am I giving you a discount? Why am I making it so great for you so that you have no risk in it at all?"
Well, now what I've done with Wayfair is that I give them the price that I would earn from Amazon. I give them that minus Amazon's fees. I give them that price for wholesale.
Okay. So it's still much more than wholesale, but not, right?
Correct.
So how that's working out?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
I think pricing is probably one of the hardest things for people to understand.
Yeah. So talk to me about that. I know we've had discussions about that. You said, like, how do I know what it costs? Like we said, the rain gauge is $5,000, so that's roughly $5 a rain gauge, so to speak, or whatever it was. That private label number we came up with is $5,000. So how much would I be selling if it cost me $5? How much would I be selling it for on Amazon?
Well, back when I went to school, when we studied consumer economics, we were always taught that you take in every cost and you figure it that by the time you take off, you add all of your costs together, that it depends on, a lot of people back then were trying to make 50% profit. So they would charge times 10 what manufacturing plus all of your costs would be 10 times. And then, but now the rule of thumb is 30%, that if you take your product and you add up every one of your costs, and I think we started a list today in the group about what all to include that I think a lot of people forget about. And after you add all those together, your main goal is to make at least some people like a 20% profit, but more companies like a 30% profit.
Yeah, and that's sort of where mine is. If it costs me $5, I want to be selling it for 15 to 20.
Well, that's times 3.
Yeah. So if it's 20 and I'm making $5 profit, I'm okay. That makes sense?
Question.
Hi, Fernanda.
Hi, Fernando here. Question. Something that I see a lot of confusion in the, whenever people talk about business is the terms of returns, margin, profits. So when we're talking about 30-50%, are we talking about return on investments? Are we talking about margin, which is like let's say 30% of your sales amount? Are we?
Right. So you've got your ROI. So if it costs you $5, your return on that investment is $5. That's 100. Is that a 100% return?
That's
right?
100%
It costs you
ROI,
$5 and you get
right?
$5. But your margin is if you sell it for $15 and you make $5 net, that's a 30% margin.
Correct. Exactly. 33%.
And a lot of people just talk about how much they sold, but they don't know how, they don't figure in what their margin and costs are. So I always have to say, stop. Is it sales or revenue?
Yeah, and plus of that, what do you put on top of your like your margin or your ROI? Are we talking about gross profit? Cost of goods sold less less revenue, let's say. And what about PPC? I mean, it's so crazy. When we once
and it has to be balanced too. So at the end of the day, all these gurus are talking about all the money they make, but are they making any money? If they're buying, like, because it depends on a different approach. If I sell something for $30 and I make $10 profit, but it costs me, I'm not including the $3 it costs me in PPC, or even in some cases, maybe I'm launching and there's people who launch and they go negative. And somebody was talking to me and they said, oh, we were selling like 400 units a day, but we were going broke. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like 400 units, that's huge. It's like, oh no, we were selling 400 units at a loss because they had to buy each and every sale at a negative amount. So I was like, that doesn't quite make it. So Brenda, if it costs you $5 without the selling and advertising fees, it costs you $5 to bring it to the country and land it, how much should you sell it for?
Rule of thumb would be $50.
$50. Yikes.
But then because then besides the $5, you want to make sure all of your costs are added to that.
Like
and
what?
That's when you would figure, if after the 50, you would figure, because right now I'm probably doing more of 7.5 instead of 10.
Because you've got the $5 is your manufacturing cost, but you've also got your delivery cost on there, right? So you've got to get it here. You've got to get it to Amazon. I don't know if there's any packaging involved in that on top of it or not, and your advertising costs. So
everything. Yeah. We made a big list today of things that I think people forget. Photography. The cost of photography, lifestyle photography, all your infographics, having everything printed, all your product inserts that you have to have for explaining about the product and your warranties and how to put it together.
That's definitely a cost.
It's definitely a cost.
Is everything but my rent and my insurance. And I would say my gross cost doesn't include the advertising because that can be variable, but that has to come into my net cost. So it's different.
What about your salary? How many people
some
don't
things
put their
are
salary
some costs. So that comes out of your profit. So that's not you. So we're in the process of buying a company, and the product costs $2, sells for $15. And she's like, well, I had to pay so much for the photos, and I had to pay so much for the trademark, and I had to pay so much for the insurance. And I'm like, none of these costs are variable costs. They're all fixed costs. They're all sunk costs. So when you did your trademark, that is a sunk cost. And that is a cost that, you've been selling this for a couple of years, you've got your money back. I don't pay for it. I pay something for it, but it's not the gross profit calculation. So I need to know if you pay so much for your business for insurance, I already pay insurance. I don't have to pay on yours. So you have to to validate all that stuff in different buckets and what you're willing to, accept.
That should be included in your profit.
Right. But that's not, if someone's selling me their business, I don't care how much rent they're paying. I already pay rent. It's not going to be an incremental cost to me. I don't care how much insurance they're paying. I already pay insurance. It's not going to be incremental. So now the trademark has some value, but it's not necessarily like some people will spend a lot of money on photography and spend thousands and thousands of dollars on photography. I don't know that I would. So some things are more, but I have to spend money to make the product. So I have to pay the manufacturing costs and I have to get it across the water and I have to pay the customs and the freight forwarding fees. So all that stuff is tangible, but the rest of the stuff has to be amortized over across all the products and all the sales. Like when you do it, it may cost you $1,000 to get the trademark done, but it's amortized over 10,000 products or 20,000 products.
Well, on Amazon especially, they've taken away all of our launching a new product abilities, and so it's so hard right now. I mean, I have a couple of rain gauges that I got in March or April or May, and all the capabilities to do a power launch right now, we just don't have that available to us.
You have to do really well. I mean, like I'm always on the search for the launch strategy. And every time I get really excited, because, oh, this is how you launch a product. And I'm always really excited because I'll read it and I'm like, oh, you're scamming. You can't pay people to give you reviews. You can't pay, there's a couple of things that have happened in the past couple of years. And basically Amazon does not want you to pay people to give you reviews. They do not want you to manipulate. But you have to do PPC. You have to spend a lot of money to launch a product. You have to do the early reviews. You have to do videos and posts and a whole bunch of stuff that you're not even sure are going to bring back a return. I feel like that's almost the definition of marketing. It's like screaming into the wind and hoping somebody hears you.
Well, I just tried the influencer marketing technique on Amazon, the influencer, and there wasn't any influencers interested in promoting rain gauges.
I'm not familiar with that. What are you talking about?
There's an influencer promotion plan that you give a coupon discount or coupon code to your social media followers. And the Amazon influencers will take your product and push it for you on their on their podcast.
Oh, but they weren't interested in that product. There wasn't any garden people?
I guess not. I mean, I wish that Amazon would come back to where they, remember a couple of years ago, they had the influencer meet our influencers in New York City. Mm-hmm. I wish they would bring that back because I think that's where you make your contacts is person to person.
Yeah. I think that you can do that. I mean, that's something somebody was saying to me, oh, you can go out and do like share a sale. So I went and I signed up for share a sale and they wanted a $500 setup fee. And I'm like, but for what? Like, how do I measure that this is valuable? How do I know that this will work? So I don't know. I do feel like I don't have the influencer end of things down, and it's kind of really nice if I did.
Well, that, and they, if you do that deal of the day, it's, what is it, $150 per product to do a deal, their deal of the day for Amazon. And I mean, I've signed up, I don't know how many times and never had that many sales.
Yeah, I know. I felt like they got all excited about doing, what is it, the deals, right? And then nothing ever happens from it. It's like, you have to have so much product in stock before you can do this. So you send all this product in and you're going to discount it and then nothing gets sold and you spent like a couple $100 to just get on. It's like, I don't
the
like,
next month they tell you to call it all back.
Yeah, and then you have to call it all back. Or they say, oh yeah, you can get all set up, and here's your time slot, 2 o'clock on a Saturday. I'm like, is there a worse time slot that you could give me?
Exactly, because everybody's out doing family things on
Yeah, I'm like,
Saturday
2 o'clock on a
afternoon.
Saturday is probably the worst time you could give me. Maybe if it were, like a storm or something. It's just like that's not. So that was one I was like, well, that was a waste of money, but thank you for teaching me that. That's fine. So if I wanted to get started, like for the folks that are watching this in the future, like if I wanted to start doing this, what do you think the best avenue is to try to find a manufacturer? I know it's kind of a loaded question. Is Alibaba good, and is it a good
Well, I
starting
think
place? But then you
Alibaba
got to use
does
common
have.
sense.
I have met a couple of garden cart factories that had. I went through the rep. Actually, I was introduced to them from the rep from Alibaba, but now I deal with the owners of the company.
Okay.
And I go direct with them. But I mean, I worked with reps initially on some of these at Alibaba that I would give them my designs for these carvers because I knew how the factories worked, how the carving factories worked for the statuary.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were willing to do that because they were familiar with it. They knew that
Okay.
And so, I mean, Alibaba can be really good source. I just think that you're not really dealing with the factory until later, unless you've done, a couple of orders from them.
Right.
And then you finally get to where you're connected to the factory directly. And I mean, if that makes sense, I just think it takes time to figure out. I don't know, maybe I should sit down and try to figure out how I feel, what makes me feel comfortable when I talk to someone to go with an order with them. That's what I probably need to do is probably write down.
I do feel like someone's asking me to help them do wholesale, and they're having no luck, and I'm dumbfounded because I'm like, oh, I feel like I don't like to say all I have is luck, but I feel like I can do pretty well with wholesale. Pick up the phone, call a vendor, talk to them. Oh, fail. Pick up the phone, call the next vendor. It's a win. Different things, and so I feel like after a while of doing something, it's sort of like riding a bike. You know not to ride in the side of the road because there's all this gravel and dirt, and you're going to hit a bump and hit something, and you try to ride when the lane is clear, and after a while you realize where that is. And it's sort of like the same thing with private label, the same thing with all this stuff is you find your lane and you find the part that's clean. And you can sort of sense like, oh, when I did that before, it seemed kind of sketchy. I don't know. I don't think I want to do that again. So maybe that's the way to think about it. But yeah, I think you got to figure out like what is the lights that go on and off when you're going through your process.
Because I've just done it so long, I've been doing it now for 20 years that I mean, it's just normal for me. So I'm going to have to sit down and actually write down what makes me feel uncomfortable when I'm talking to someone about making one of my designs. I'm going to have to do that.
Yeah, when they keep saying yeah, and you're like, really? You keep saying yes. I would think that maybe one of the interesting things I learned. I never really felt comfortable negotiating things until I met. I don't want to say studied under, but was working with somebody who was a really good negotiator. And I'm like, wow, all he did was ask more questions.
More questions, yes.
How much is it? Oh, well, what if I bought 10,000 of these? Well, what if I bought 5,000? Oh, well, what if I got different colors? Oh, do you ever do anything where you ship it by coastal? He just asked every question, questions I didn't even think made sense. And he wrote down the answers and he kept track of it all. And at the end, the person on the other end of the phone was so engaged that they would have done anything for him. I was like,
that's a good thing.
That's a little pricey, but maybe if we did this. And they're like, yeah.
Question, I've never done the direct sourcing per se, but if I wanted to do it now, I mean, what it comes to my mind is instead of putting myself out there and try to find a manufacturer, I feel more comfortable working with a sourcing agent that people around me have recommended me and say, that specializes or knows factories within that category. Why from your point of view, what would that be a bad idea, or why wouldn't, should I go that route?
I think if you've got good recommendations for the sourcing agent, that makes total sense. The sourcing agents I've worked with in the past couple of years have been terrible. It's like they're too young, or they don't know, like they've been not young like in age, but in experience. So they're like, oh yeah, I'm like, here's what I want. Go get, I want a password holder and I want it in polka dot. Go find me 3 sources with that information and get me the prices. And it was a disaster.
Well, one thing, when you're working with a rep like that, they're going to know your designs. They're going to tell other people about your designs.
Mhm.
They're going to talk to the factory, and they're going to, how many factories are they going to talk to about what kind of design you want to have made? And so will that
Yeah,
give
but
them?
not every design is a good design. So
And what if I, told this factory over here and they decided they could make their own design off of my idea?
I get that, but yeah, I don't know. Like I'm definitely paranoid on many things, but to the point that I'm questioning myself. Okay, am I not scaling enough for being paranoid, or so I don't know. Maybe I'm sure there is. I don't know if you want to make. I don't know. In my case, I don't think that will be like a super concern, because I'm probably, my first idea is not gonna be a $10 million product.
yeah,
So
I mean, like I've done things, and I've tried to go direct source, and I've tried to go through like an Alibaba, and I got fairly through the process. And the person at the end wanted me to do 5,000 units, and they wanted me to pay like, I don't know, let's say $4 a piece. I ended up, sometimes it's serendipity. I ended up talking to someone at a trade show, the Chinese American guy that's in my vendor now. And he was able to do the same product, exactly the same, with a much lower quantity for $2 a piece, literally delivered to my doorstep, where he did all the freight forwarding, he did all the importing, he did all the dealing with the samples, and did everything. So, sometimes I'm like, wow, if I went with the first one, I would have been paying like it's like, I didn't know what I didn't know. I would have been paying twice as much. My margin would have been so much thinner. And then I've done things with vendors who I know I'm paying a premium, but they already know how to do everything. So one of my vendors did a product, and then like, you know what? After I did the product I've been doing that product with them for, it's got to be 4 or 5 years now, and they're getting to be difficult because I'm like, well, we don't know if we want to do these things anymore. I went to another vendor, and they're half as much. The price is half as much. They're much more cooperative. And I went to a third vendor that is sourcing it for me and is even cheaper. But the product's not as great, but for this entity, it might be fine. So I guess what I'm really saying is sometimes if you can keep the experiment, you keep it to an experimentation level until you find out where you're going, and you put in your mind, it's sort of like when you're doing a home improvement and the first quote is $10,000 and you're like, oh my God, that's so much money. But then the third quote is, the second quote is $12,000 and the third quote is $14,000. The $10,000 doesn't look so bad and you get used to it. So I think when you're talking about private label, if you say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to be careful, I'm going to be concerned, and I'm going to take $5,000, and that's my gamble, and that's what I may end up. I may not lose it all. I may, be able to the worst case, maybe I'd throw half of it away, right? I don't know if that's how you look at it, Brenda, but I just feel like I try to find a place where I'm like, okay, I'd be okay if I learned something and I didn't totally like blow it.
Well, I'm the kind of person that I always check with other vendors too, to see what they're doing, and other factories, and see what they're doing and that kind of stuff. I mean, so I think that's a good thing, that you need to keep that, because you need to keep in mind, what kind of prices I'm being charged for, the art from the artist and everything. And when you can see the other people do it for cheaper, but then, is the quality of product, how bad is the quality? Right. And that's something else that you have to be careful though when you do check, because they don't think in the same kind of quality like we would think sometimes.
No. There's a huge, I'm always impressed with to my mind, the huge cultural difference between the Chinese culture and the American culture, and how that anything gets done that actually is okay. Like, I've had a couple experiences where they've taken my product and just reduced it by 1/8 of an inch all the way around, and that 1/8 of an inch negated its functionality. I have a friend, same product, been working with this vendor for years, and they made everything just a little bit smaller. Again, the same issue. It was an RFID insert that they made just a tiny bit smaller to save probably $20 on the whole order. And it undermined the integrity of the product. You know, it's like, this is what I'm paying you to make. This is what I'm paying you to make yesterday and tomorrow. Like, why would you mess around with it? But they're like, it's okay as long as we don't get caught. It's like, oh, you got caught. Now what? Oh, we'll give you a discount. Like, what if I didn't catch that? And my customers did. So, you know,
Well,
it's a whole thing.
My freight forwarder, he has someone that it works in China that prepares all my shipments over there, and they are my quality control. They go in and make sure that the product is the same as what I need and what I've asked for. And now that I work with the owner of the company, he is very good about making sure that everything follows what I'm asking for. But I think my freight, because first of all, I think what helped make the trust between us was that I had somebody over there, the freight forwarder person was there, and they were handling this for me. So they knew that I was the real deal, for one thing. So they knew that I was going to complain if I didn't get what I wanted, or if it was not made correctly, and they knew that the freight forwarder on that end was basically looking over their shoulder. And I think that's what really helped me a lot, because people knew that, I was a real deal business, that I wanted this product with quality and how I wanted it. And so, last shipment I had one product that they made I always request a shiny paint on this one certain area, and they put a flat paint on it. And so, and I complained about it. So they made it different this time.
Okay.
They followed through, and I got it for the same price that I paid last time. And
so I think that's the answer, Fernando, is you've got to ask a lot of questions when you're doing this. So this is what I want. What are you? So we do a lot of customization, and I asked, we're looking at a new vendor, and I said, well, what is your, when you mess up, because human beings are involved and we are not perfect, what is your process? How do you solve for that? And he's like, well, we don't have a process. I'm like, well, I need to know, like, when you mess up, that you're going to put me in front, that I'm going to get that. And that's the kind of thing, like with China, it's like, all right, when, how am I going to check this with you? And what is your process if I find a certain fail point? And what's that fail point? 10%, irregular, 20% fail, and what happens when that happens, right? Like, they're not going to make everything perfect. Even if it's coming off a machine, it's still not going to be perfect.
And at what point in their process will they fix it for you? How far in the process can they go before they'll still continue to fix it for you?
Yeah. Like, do I want to have it delivered and say 10% I have to throw away and I have to test it all? No, I want it to be a higher percentage. So, and that's what your tolerance is.
Question.
Does that make sense?
No, yeah, 100%, 100%. And I would like to get your thoughts with all of the things that are happening in terms of shipping delays and the supply chain disruption. Have you been starting to look more into the U.S. or maybe another country in America to do the products instead of China?
I talked earlier, I still use Bangladesh and Peru a lot. I use Vietnam. India is becoming a very good place now to source, direct source through. There, I found when you go to India I think that their prices are a little higher, but I also think that India is willing to work with your designs to direct source with them. So, I mean, there's a lot of companies out here. Now, I had a friend that she sold everything from Europe. So she was using Europe factories and so I know that there's factories there. I mean, the problem with my design, there's really no one here in the United States that I have found that does the kind of designs I need for rain gauges, any type of factories.
Yeah, I do metalware and I can't get it done here. I tried and it was $2 from China delivered or $14 in the United States a piece. I was like,
Wow.
that's not even close. But I do hear that the Chinese costs are going up. Their standard of living is increasing and the cost of labor is going up. So it's becoming less of a gap in the United States, depending on what it is. Like what I was doing was a coating treatment. So the coating treatment, some environmental issues. We've since moved away from it, even in China. But you know, when you look at the United States, it's feasible. One of my products is made in the United States. It's made in North Carolina, and it's comparable. It's now, if I were to make it in China, it would probably cost me like $6.50 to make it. If I were to do it in China, it would probably be $1.50, but I'm not sure what ingredients they'd be putting in there. And I like the fact that this product, since it's a soap product, that it's US based and I can talk to every single ingredient and I have high comfort level that it's accurate, versus maybe not so much from another country that has nobody can go and sue them. There's no recourse. So, but I am hearing that there is sort of a manufacturing, like growth spurt or regrowth spurt in the United States. So it's not a bad idea to source it in the United States and see what you get. And then that's just make sure that they're not sourcing it from China and marking it up.
Now, I've checked into a couple factories here that make insulation for homes, and I've talked to some people that I know that works for them that do metal work for the company, and I was going to have them make some products for me for my garden out of metal. Yeah. But the problem is that, I mean, when they get off of their regular job, they don't want to do anything extra after that. It's like going to Etsy and trying to find someone who makes a product there and trying to have them make you enough that you can list it on Amazon.
Mm-hmm. I remember asking someone on Etsy if they could do something custom, and I said, "And could you do like 500 units a month?" And they're like, "Yeah." I was like, "Okay."
I know. I looked
at
Etsy. I looked at Etsy too for some garden sign things, and they just couldn't keep up with what I needed, how many I needed a month.
Because they were not set up for it.
Hobby business.
I would say that they were just probably a single person business. Probably more.
I would say a lot of people on Etsy probably are like stay-at-home moms that have a cute crafty thing. You know, that's sort of the whole ethos of Etsy.
Or retired people.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're way past our time, so I don't want to impose anymore. Fernanda, did you have any other questions? That sounds like no. So thank you so much. We'll talk again. I really appreciate this. This is really informative. I'm sure we're going to get a lot more questions. And so thank you so much. How can people reach you, Brenda?
I'm in the Amazon exclusive group on Facebook. You can reach me there. I'm the admin. I keep everybody in line there. I've tried to.
That's right. She keeps us all to the truth. She'll ask me like, "Did you invite this person?" I'm like, "I did, maybe. I'm sorry."
Hello.
Hey, Fernando, did you have any more questions before I let Brenda go?
Oh yeah, sorry. I was talking about what from sourcing from outside the United States. What would you guys be expecting as normal lead times from the time that you place the order to the time that it's delivered to your warehouse in the US?
Well, I think it depends on the product a lot. If there, you know, if how much is it going to be handmade? When I talked earlier about my baskets, I had the factory, their employees had to they dyed all the grasses first and let them dry, and then the people, they wove the baskets, and then there was another set in the factory that would make the heating tiles, and they would hand and size the design on it and carve it. And so when I would make an order in Bangladesh, I knew that they would take probably 3 months to fulfill my order. And by the time I would get it, though, it would be about 9 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mine is about, I would say, when the time I place an order to the time I get it is 4 months, but now it's bumped up to about 6-7 months.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's, you know, it's a process.
So, I mean, you really, if you're going to be a designer of product, you really need to start thinking about, if I want something to come start the 1st of January, say I'm going to start, you know, a new line the 1st of January, I would say that you would probably have to have it in production. Like if you're going to China, but I mean, you would have to have something planned to go in production, depending on how many months. You just have to figure on how many months. For China, you would have to figure it would go into production at least by probably May to have it by the 1st of January. So that's how far in advance you have to think about your designs and what you're going to offer for the different seasons.
Yeah.
And then hope it works.
Yeah, and then hope it works.
Yeah. It's I remember like RA is a little, like the whole process of the evolution of selling is of doing retail is a whole gamble, right? And you know, when you're doing RA, you know, wholesale looks like a gamble. When you're doing wholesale, private label looks a gamble. When you're direct sourcing, that's even a bigger gamble. So
I think my biggest concern right now is how to do a product launch. How am I going to get a couple of these products that I already have? How am I going to get them off the ground? I've been trying so many things that I don't know what else to do. And it's so hard this time. And I have never had this problem with a product launch before, ever.
yeah. That's another call. We should get, I should find someone who's Mr. Launch or Mrs. Launch and get them on.
I'd listen to them.
All right then. Well, thank you very much. I will talk to you soon. We'll be putting the video up online in the next couple days. And that's huge. Thank you guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.